Welcome back to our virtual learning series. My name is Zach Olson, and I'm on the education team here at the Iowa Center. Can you hear me okay, by the way? Okay, thanks for joining us. As always, I want to remind everybody of our COVID resources and our one-on-one coaching scheduler, links available right on the website homepage. We're also putting out a lot of information regarding education opportunities, local small business news, all things related on our social media profiles. So at Instagram, we are at the Iowa Center. We have a Facebook group called the Iowa Small Business Resources and Support. As always, we want to make sure we are serving the needs of small business owners across the state. So please check in early, check in often, and reach out if you don't find what you're looking for. Please note we are recording this session so we can share it later on our website, and everyone is, at least when you enter the room, you're on mute. We want you all to feel engaged, but also limit background noise and interruptions. So please utilize the chat function at the bottom of your screen if you have any questions, and I know Eric's gonna stop quite often for that engagement. Okay, enough from me. Of all the skills needed to successfully run your own business, especially in today's landscape, executing fundamentals of public speaking is right up there at the top. That can be hard enough on its own, but now we've all been kind of forced to apply that understanding to the virtual world, which can be pretty daunting at first. I speak from experience. So today we're going to learn some tips, tricks, hacks, resources to sharpen your screen speaking skills. Eric Dominguez is a public speaking and storytelling trainer, educator, coach, and owner of Speak Up Stories. For almost 25 years, his team-oriented speaking and teaching style has centered around shared experiences, the philosophy that everyone has a unique story, and a belief that everyone can share their minds and hearts through powerful presentations. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Eric to talk about screen-to-screen speaking.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Good morning, you all. Before we get started, Craig, I think you accidentally started sharing your screen. So if you could log that off. Looks awesome. The documents look great. I'm sure they're filled with tremendous content, but if we could move that off to the side. While he's doing that, again, good morning. My name is Eric Dominguez. I'm owner and founder of Speak Up Stories. I am a meta speaker, meaning that I speak about speaking and the importance of cultivating powerful speaking and storytelling in our professional and personal lives. Now, there's a reason why I'm not going to be using visuals. I did drop my presentation into the chat. So if you're a visual learner, if you follow along, if you have to read along while you hear a speaker present, by all means, download that PDF file. You can follow along with me. While we're going, I want you to start to think about, because I'm going to call on some of you, why wouldn't I have presentation? Why would I have visual aids during this webinar? Why wouldn't I have presentational aids during these interactions? It's a question I'll call on randomly someone a little bit later. My expectation for you all and my goals are to give you information on screen-to-screen communication, innovation, ways to innovate your screen-to-screen communications, and mostly my goal is to interact with you. The best way to learn public speaking is to actually do it, to actually be involved in it. Now, for some of you, even though we may be separated by distance, I may have put a pit in your stomach, like, uh-oh, am I gonna have to unmute and speak out loud? If you're anything like me, you have that pit in your stomach. I will be totally honest with you. I've been doing public speaking and public speaking training for almost 17 years. And I still woke up this morning with that pit, like, oh no, I'm gonna be in front of a camera. I'm gonna be in front of people saying words out loud. Public speaking fears, anxieties, inefficiencies are not something that necessarily go away. Those fears don't disappear. They just get transformed into fuel. So in order to start our interaction, I would love two people to share with us what they are grateful for today. Who is willing to jump up to the bat? What are you grateful for today?
I'm grateful to hear the birds singing and to see the trees blossoming and the flowers growing. I'm grateful for that. Fresh air.
Absolutely. The birds woke me up this morning, and it was a great way to have an alarm. Thank you so much for sharing. How about one more person sharing with us what they're grateful for this morning? Uh-oh, I will call on randomly someone.
My name is Beth Mensing. I am grateful that I got a new candle in the mail last Friday, and I decided to burn it this morning because I was going to be working from home for like a whole 3 hours, and to have a whole full burn for this new soy candle, which I just learned that soy candles actually have a memory. So if you don't burn them fully for the first time you burn them, you're just going to get that little tiny burn in the middle. So I'm grateful that I got it lit, and it smells amazing.
That is awesome. I didn't know that about soy.
You learned something new.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. Wonderful. Well, I'm grateful for a lot of things. One of the things I'm grateful for is the weather, which I know if you're logging in from Iowa, from the Des Moines area, you know that it's a little overcast, but it's not snowing. To start us off and to kind of set the framework for some of the essential lessons of today, I want to tell you a story about a time where the weather tripped up my public speaking quite a bit. I was living and working in Arizona. I was coaching and teaching at one of the elite high schools there, and I was coaching their speech and debate team. And every year we would travel to a very prestigious, very important, very large tournament at Harvard University. And my assistant coach had set up a meeting with 2 graduate students. One was a PhD in political science and law, and one was getting his doctorate in law from Harvard University. And this was going to be an amazing opportunity for me. It was going to be an amazing opportunity for my coaches, and it was going to be an amazing opportunity for our students. We were going to enroll them in helping us do some research and some coaching for our debate cases. And this is an important detail to note. If you have ever lived in Arizona, you know that Arizona weather doesn't quite fluctuate that much. It's hot, less hot, more hot. And then sometimes, occasionally, maybe it rains a little bit. But you don't really check the weather like you do here in Iowa, in the Midwest, or in other parts of the country. But when we're traveling to the East Coast, I'm checking the weather because I'm responsible for students, I'm responsible for other teachers and coaches, and making sure that the travel arrangements all are set and flow easily. So there was no snow on the radar. We landed on Thursday. We had a very important meeting on Saturday. And Friday night, important detail, snow had fallen. So Friday night, there was a big blizzard, lots and lots of snow. So Saturday comes, and my assistant coach and I, we go and meet these 2 gentlemen. And we meet them at a restaurant. We shake hands, exchange pleasantries. And one of them says, how are you Arizona folks adjusting to this cold? How are you adjusting to this weather? And in probably one of, if not the most embarrassing verbal slip up of my life, I, without thinking, said, yeah, I can't believe it snowed yesterday. S-N-E-W, snow, meaning the past tense of snow. That word does not exist. That is grammatically very incorrect. And I said these words in front of 2 people that we were really trying to impress to join our elite special program, who are getting educated by Harvard University. Now, the story ends up fine. We all had a great laugh at my expense. My friends still have a great laugh at my expense every time that it snows. I get text messages like, oh, did it snow yesterday? Like, okay, yeah, I get it. And we had a great discussion on linguistics and why my brain connected that conjugation. It all ended up fine. But I tell that story for 3 essential takeaways. If you, for whatever reason, get to log off, you need to go take care of something, if you tune me out for whatever reason, I really want you to take these 3 home with you. And with these 3, I'm gonna need 3 volunteers, because throughout the presentation, I'm gonna call on you to remind our audience of what these essential takeaways are. Who's gonna be my first volunteer? Either raise your hand or wave at me or unmute yourself and say, I got you, Eric. How about, all right. I think I see, can't see your name. Is it Anne? I got you. Oh, I see you. This is where the technology is great. Where you go? Lynn, sorry, Lynn, go ahead, Lynn. Okay, Lynn, anytime I point to you, I say, Lynn, what's essential lesson number 1? You are going to say, public speaking is a skill, not a task. Public speaking is a skill, not a task. So Lynn, let's practice. I'm in the middle of something great, a great point, and I say, Lynn, what's essential on lesson number 1? You unmute yourself and you say?
Public speaking is a skill, not a task. Perfect.
This is really important to keep in mind. Oftentimes we see public speaking as to be done. You have a job interview in 2 weeks, so you get to prepare for those 2 weeks. You get through the job interview, I'm done. You have a major presentation at work that's due in a month. You prepare, you practice, you get it done, we're done. You have a keynote address in 2 months. You prepare, you get it done, it's over. However, public speaking is just like piano, just like basketball. There's going to be some naturally gifted piano players that are going to be able to sit down and just, knock out a beautiful composition almost right off the bat. There's going to be naturally talented basketball players that are just going to seem to ebb and flow. But even the best piano players and even the best basketball players, they get to continue to practice daily. They get to hone their craft. No matter where you are on the spectrum of public speaking, it is so essential that you see it as a skill, not something that you have to do, not something that you have to check off of your list. Essential takeaway number 2. Who's going to be my essential takeaway number 2 reminder? Tony, I think I had your hand, I saw your hand up. Excellent. Thank you, Tony. Tony, essential takeaway number 2 is going to be public speaking is any time you say words out loud. Public speaking is any time that you say words out loud. So I'm in my groove, I'm teaching, I'm doing all sorts of fun, creative, innovative things, and then all of a sudden I say, and that's important to know because essential takeaway number 2 is what, Tony?
Public speaking is any time you say words out loud.
Anytime you say words out loud. This is critical because we often think of public speaking as presenting. Here is my PowerPoint. Now I am done public speaking. However, public speaking is sitting, having coffee with your partner. It is having a team meeting at your work. It is casually having a conversation with someone at the grocery store. Anytime you say words, you are practicing the skill of public speaking. Because public speaking is, above everything else, connection. You are connecting your message to somebody else's ears. So that's a great shift in mindset, because once you start thinking about public speaking as anytime you open your mouth and words come out, you get to practice that daily habit. Awesome. Essential takeaway number 3. Who's going to be my essential takeaway number 3? Raise your hand or unmute yourself or give me a crazy sign. Awesome. Michelle, thank you so much. When I am in my groove and I talk about essential takeaway number 3, you are going to say, public speaking perfection is an illusion. Public speaking perfection is an illusion. One of the main reasons why we fear public speaking is because we feel like we have to be perfect. So Michelle, let's practice. I'm in my groove, I'm teaching, I'm doing all sorts of crazy things. Oh, that reminds me of essential takeaway number 3, which is what, Michelle?
Public speaking, perfection is an illusion.
Excellent. I've already slipped up a few times. I haven't had perfect fluid speech. I've already made a few mental blunders. I've already had some technology hiccups. That's especially important right now when most of our communication is screen to screen. Right before we officially started, we were joking about how Zoom sometimes locks us out, right? It could happen in this meeting. I could be in a groove talking all about the importance of screen to screen communication, and I'll just freeze. And everybody will think, oh my goodness, what's happening? Or you might be in your home and your kids might come up and say, I need a snack, or your dog may jump on you. Super important for us, especially in this age of screen-to-screen communication, to release that fear and to release that expectation of perfection. We're not going to always get it perfect. In fact, very rarely are we going to get it perfect. What we're striving for is excellence, not perfection. Great. Questions before we really dive into screen-to-screen communication? Awesome. Diving into screen-to-screen communication, it's really important that we focus on public speaking fundamentals. Yes, this is really, really different from what we might experience if we had been face-to-face. But some public speaking fundamentals are not only just as important, they are more important because we are disconnected through technology. The first public speaking fundamental that is critical to understand in screen-to-screen communication is facial expressions. Now, I need a volunteer, someone who has, just walk with me here, someone who has a snack nearby. Someone who has, oh, I just saw you, Beth. I just saw you. You're perfect. Beth, will you unmute yourself? That was such great timing.
Damn it, yes.
By the way, it's lunch hour. If you need to snack, by all means, snack.
Yep.
Okay, Beth, here's what we're going to do. On your next bite, what I want you to do is I want you to, what are you eating, by the way? May I ask?
Cottage cheese with everything bagel seasoning.
Oh, that sounds tremendous.
Newfound treat.
That is really, really great. Here's what I want you to do. Before you take your next bite, I want you to plug your nose. I know. Just want you to plug your nose like this.
Okay.
And I want you to go ahead and take a bite. And while you're taking a bite, I'm going to talk. There you go. So you've taken a few bites prior to this. So you know what cottage cheese with everything bagel tastes like.
Yeah.
Tell me what it tasted like when you plugged your nose. Did you feel a difference? What was the difference?
You lose half your taste when you can't smell it.
Absolutely. You lose half your taste when you can't smell it. And it's so odd, right? Because this should impact this. We think that. It's the same thing with facial expressions and communication. Think about facial expressions as the nose to your taste. If I started this meeting and I said, hello, my name is Eric Dominguez. I am super excited to be here. I am so joyful right now. I can barely contain myself. Wow, what a day. There's a disconnect there. There's a total disconnect. You are going to believe what you see over what you hear, right? So this, I'm so excited, is not going to be effective. It's not going to give the same punch. You might hear the same message, right? If I'm teaching you, certain elements of our company, and this is the report, here's the things that you need to know, you might be able to jot down the information, but you're not going to be totally convinced that I'm convinced. So there's an actual disconnection behind that. When I was in college, I did a lot of community theater just to be involved and to sharpen my skills. And one of my directors would always say that that I would be a much better stage actor than a film actor. And I couldn't figure out why until I realized that as a speaker, I'm trained to overly express, because if we were in a keynote style address and I was on stage, I would need to overdo my facial expressions so that you could see everything that was happening, okay? Any subtlety here is not necessarily going to be captured. But since most of our screen-to-screen communication is right here, I have to make sure to keep a balance of facial expressions. Too little facial expression. Good, this is fine, everything's okay. You're gonna get automatically disconnected. Now, Beth, you don't need to unmute, but if I put a ghost pepper in your cottage cheese, oh yeah, it wouldn't matter if you plugged your nose, you would taste that ghost pepper. It would be out of control. The other end of that balance is making sure that we're not overdoing facial expressions. If I came into this meeting and I said, "Hi, I'm Eric Dominguez. Boy, am I super excited to see you," right? That's going over the top. That's leaning into inauthenticity, and it's gonna be distracting if I am just in your camera face doing this all the time. So the takeaway with facial expressions in screen-to-screen communication is, one, make sure you have them, but two, don't push yourself so far that it becomes a distraction. Questions on facial expressions? Awesome, excellent. Number two, let's talk about the fundamental number two, which is visual aids. Oh, I'm so excited to talk about this. At the beginning of this, I expressed to you a quandary. Why am I not using my visual aids? I did prepare a visual aid presentation for this, and you can access it in the chat. But why am I not using it? I'd love to hear from some theories as to why I'm not connecting in that regard. No wrong answers.
Well, I imagine because you want us to be able to see you and not be focused on the paper, right? As opposed to, then we wouldn't see any of your your visual cues and your body language.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tony. That's definitely one of the reasons, is for you to see my facial expressions, for you to see and connect who I am and what I'm doing. Because we're not face to face, and I see in the chat a lot of great comments on distraction. If this were a classroom style environment and you all walked into this room and I'd be able to shake your hands, we would be sitting down, and you would have this immediate connection with me. Okay, it could be positive, could be neutral, could be negative, but we are going to be interacting face to face. You're going to be getting so much other stimuli from your eyes, your ears, your hearing, all of the different things that are going on. Connection is much easier face to face, and having a visual aid is just that. It is an aid. It is an additional concept. It's an additional support to my message. What I'm saying here is that, what I'm not saying is that you shouldn't use facial expressions. you shouldn't use visual aids. You should absolutely use visual aids, but only when those visual aids are going to support your message. Too often I'll be working with clients on their presentation, and the way that they work on their presentation is that they work on their visual aids first and their messaging second. The visual aid is not the message. The visual aid is the mechanics. It is the messenger of the message. We've all been in those meetings where we got called in for half an hour, 45 minutes, 2 hours long, and we walk out of that meeting and we think, Golly, that could have been just said in an email, right? Have we all been through those? It's the same type of thing in screen-to-screen communication. If I could communicate everything that I was and everything that I wanted to teach you all through my visual aid, then I could just email it and everything would be a-okay. You would get a whole lot of benefit from that. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with creating a PowerPoint presentation or a document that communicates. However, when you are doing screen-to-screen communication, the focus should be primarily on who you are and what you are doing. Awesome. Any questions on visual aids?
Yeah, so this is maybe more of a technology question, but would it be possible for you to set up a scenario where the visual aids were kind of behind you, like on a simulated whiteboard or something, so you could see both?
Absolutely, and I did consider that for this. There is a way that you can have your visual aids and yourself speaking, especially in webinar settings for Zoom. That's kind of how it goes, is you would see my PowerPoint presentation, you would see my visual aid, and then I would be this little tiny box in the corner. The reason why I chose not to do that is because, again, the visual is the front message, I am the back message. Now, I'm not saying like, everybody look at me, pay attention to me, but my messaging is how I am serving you here. It is not the actual presentation. That's the other reason why I dropped in my actual presentation into the comments, because some people are visual learners. So I would always give that option to your audience. Some people like to see something, write it down, or they'll read it and remember it better. I would always just to, as much as possible, connect human to human. We're already separated by screens, so even just this interaction, no matter how minute it might be, is much more than PowerPoint. Great question, Tony, I appreciate that. Awesome. Public speaking fundamental number 3 is organization. Somebody tell me, hypothetically, if you had to give a presentation for your, if you had to give the presentation for your job or an interview, whatever the case may be, how would you go about preparing for that? No wrong answers. There's no wrong way to prepare for a presentation.
I like to build an outline.
Awesome, Jennifer. Tell me about this outline. How do you go about organizing the outline?
Well, I determine what the end result is for what I'm trying to communicate, and then I consider why they care, and then I figure out how to articulate the gap with that outline. Wow,
that is a tremendous way to approach that outline. That is really, really effective and very powerful, because it's setting you up for connection, and it's setting you up to understand the needs of your audience. That's tremendous. Very, very, very good. Who else? Is there anybody else who would like to share how they prepare for a presentation? Okay, if you are taking notes, I want you to write this down. And if you're not taking notes, know that it's in my document. This is one of the greatest takeaways that I've learned over the years. Brains crave 2 things when they are receiving information: order and novelty. Brains crave order and novelty. So let me give you counterexamples. If I hopped on, and unfortunately this happens, if I hopped on and I was like, all right, yeah, cool. Well, yeah, we're talking about communications, right? Okay, cool. So let's talk about, what do you guys want to talk about? What do you guys want to talk about in terms of screen-to-screen communication? You would immediately get frustrated because you're here to be served. You're here to learn. You're here to understand. You're here to get trained, and you need to have a path for the audience. The more work your audience has to do, the less they're going to get out of it. So creating an order and a path in your presentation, in your speaking, the better our brains are able to follow. Now, I think Tony, you had public speaking essential takeaway. What's essential takeaway number 2?
Public speaking is anytime you say words out loud.
Exactly. Here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that before you have that cup of coffee and that conversation with your partner or your friend that you need to go out and outline and have like sticky notes and figure out the best possible way to communicate with them. However, sometimes when you're having an important discussion, when you're having a significant talk about something that's impacting both of you, it's really good to have an order or a sequence to what you want to say. Now, in regards to brains crave novelty, novelty is something new, something that you haven't seen before. The goal that I always have for my clients is that when they walk off stage, whatever that stage may be, my goal is that their audience says, wow, I've seen anyone like that, or I never saw anybody present it that particular way, in that regard. There is a way to go over the top with this. If you all logged on and I was introduced and suddenly I started just interpretive dancing, public speaking, screen to screen communication, right? And this is all I did without words. I just did all of this, right? Would it be novel? Yeah. Would you immediately pay attention like, what's this guy doing? Yeah. But your brain would kick out. Your brain would automatically kick out after a few minutes because you think this is too much and I'm not getting anything out of it. The key is to find one unique thing, one unique way to interact with your audience so that you're not following the same formula. The best way to approach this is evaluate what you continually see, what you would like to see, which is in the framework of what you want to do. Again, if you're an interpretive dancer and you want to do 30 seconds of an interpretive dance, awesome. That sounds pretty interesting if it fits the context. But always be considering how can you involve your audience, especially screen-to-screen communication. How can you involve them so that they're keeping their attention and engagement on you? I like to use the up-down model. And I've tried to model this as much as possible in this. Up is meaning you're doing something, you're thinking, you're reacting. It's a little bit more difficult in a screen-to-screen interaction, but it's pop-ins. That's why I have my 3 check-ins on the essential learning. Okay, they're on their toes, and they're for it. And you're on your toes too, listening for when those 3 things are going to come and interact. If this were a typical classroom discussion, I would still have that because it increases the engagement. The down model of an up-down model is you are more passive learners, meaning I'm communicating more, you're absorbing the information. In a traditional setting, if this were a longer workshop, it would be me talking and lecturing for about 10, 15 minutes, then you doing for 5 to 10 minutes. Me 15, you 5 to 10, and balancing out until you're practicing much more than I am speaking. Great. What questions do you have on organization?
So I have a question about the novelty.
Absolutely.
So I think I understand what you're talking about, but so if I've seen you 5 times, how, does that mean that you have to do something novel or different every one of those times that I see you, or am I going to get used to your style?
That's a really phenomenal question. If you see me 5 times, you're going to see 5 different styles of presentations. It's not going to be completely different, but there will be an activity, there will be a shift, there will be something different about what you will see from me the next time. Not every single presentation will be the same. Think of it in terms of when you were in high school or college. Teachers had order to their lessons. Great teachers had order to their lessons, and once a week, they would do something wacky, something crazy. Like everybody move the desks to the side, or let's build a fort, or let's color this activity backwards. Something that will shift our minds out of the norm. To answer your question more specifically, Tony, if we did a part 2 of this series and you showed up, you would see something a little bit different in terms of engagement. And I'm learning too, as you as a speaker are continuing to give workshops, continuing to have screen-to-screen meetings, you're learning some of the technology tools that are available to you to continue to engage your audience as well. Great question, Tony. Any other questions?
Not a question, but more of a comment. Like that makes me feel like I should be working a little bit harder, because I feel like I rely on the same like tactics and tools and like common phrases that my presentations start to sound boring to me, and to try to make it a little bit more exciting for me will make it more exciting for them as well.
Absolutely. When you start getting bored, your audience is automatically going to be bored. So a lot of that novelty is really a lot for you. Like, let me try this cool thing out. Let me figure out what else I could do. And Michelle, what was public speaking essential number 3?
Yes, public speaking perfection is an illusion.
Public speaking perfection is an illusion. Sometimes you're going to try something completely novel, and it's going to go wah, 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 right? Like, oops. Sometimes you're going to try some technological tool and tip, and it's going to throw everything out the window. And especially in screen-to-screen communication, you just say, okay, well, that didn't work out the way that I intended it to. That's okay. We'll move on. If you're looking for that, this has to be perfect, and this has to be novel and fresh, and everybody's going to remember it, that tension of perfection, then you're going to see whatever you tried as failure, and then you're not going to be as willing to try something new. So absolutely continue to shift so that it's fun. I mean, speaking and leading discussions should absolutely be fun for you.
So I have a question kind of, I think, related. So oftentimes when I present, recently it's been to college students, and I get no questions, and I try to engage them, and they don't really engage, and I think, well, this is a waste of everyone's time. And then as soon as the presentation's over, like half of the room comes up and wants to talk to you one-on-one about the subject that you were just talking. Is that just human nature, or is that like a flaw in the presentation?
Tony, I am so glad that you asked that question. I promise you, I've never met Tony, so this is because it is literally my next slide on feedback and how to use appropriate feedback. So that was like, it's almost like I slipped you a $5 bill before this so that you could ask that question to perfectly transition into my next comment, which is having a feedback loop. It's really important to have a feedback loop. Before I get into that, I want to address Tony's question. In a live audience, if you all were, let's just go into a college classroom, Tony, because that's the context that you proposed. This were a college classroom, and you all were in seats, and I was talking. I would be able to get some sort of feedback. We get nonverbal and verbal feedback as to how the presentation is going. This is a really delicate balance. Some people are incredibly expressive in the way that they give feedback. I am. If I'm watching a speaker and they say something I like, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a clapper, like, yeah, go for it, right? Some people are what I call stone facers. They will respond to you like this. If you watch Amy Cuddy's TED Talk on body language, her research shows that this, no reaction, is worse than being heckled. So, Tony, I acknowledge your pain, because I've been in those discussions, I've been in those lectures where I just get this. But then when you're done, people come up to you and they say, oh, that was great. That was so good. Here's what you have to keep in mind. Not everybody is going to process the way that you process, right? There's going to be some people who are jotting things down. There's going to be some people who are even playing games on their phone. And your mind might think, oh, man, like, how rude of them. How rude of them to be playing a game on their phone while I'm talking. But then you speak to them and you realize them playing a game on their phone is the way that their brain best concentrates. So releasing that perfection, again, Michelle, what's number 3?
Yes, public speaking perfection is an illusion.
An illusion. It is an absolute illusion. My encouragement when you are speaking, especially screen to screen, is to get feedback from your audience as much as possible, but understand that that feedback is personal to them, not to you. Okay, that's really, really significant. And it's really difficult to read. I have you all on my screen. Those of you who are on your screen, I can see your faces, but I can't quite necessarily make out what your body language may or may not be doing. Some of you I see smiling, but some of you I can see like, I don't know, is that good, is that bad? If I get in my own head, if I get too much into, oh, that person's not smiling enough. Why is that person not smiling enough? Then I'm gonna go into a spiral of, I'm not doing well. Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. And then I drop out. What's key, and the point that I really wanted to make, was getting in a feedback loop in your team. Not having a feedback loop for your speaking, screen to screen or in person, is like playing a game of one-on-one basketball. Like, you can definitely take a basketball, you can go out into the court and you can play and you can shoot and you can do really, really well and you can hit the 3-pointer and all of the things. But in the end, you didn't really have anyone to confront you with your mistakes. You didn't have anyone to confront you with what you did well. So my encouragement to you is you gather a team of individuals who you trust, who are going to give you feedback in what worked and what didn't work. So many times we present these, we give these presentations, or we go to these job interviews, or we run these meetings, and then we think, how did it go? Well, or it went okay, or it was terrible. You don't really actually know. It's just based off of how you feel. This is my life. This is my career, public speaking. And I have coaches around me. You know, when I get the recording of this, I'm going to send it out to my coaches and they're going to give me feedback of, hey, this went well, this went well. This did not go well. Did you notice that you did this? And I'm going to say, yeah, I noticed. Did you notice you did this? I say, no, I didn't notice that. It's constantly understanding and getting coaching on how it went. A lot of times we are our own worst critic. So one slip up will haunt us for days. And then when you go to your team of coaches, when you go to your team of who gives you feedback and you say, hey, when I slipped up, when I had that typo, when I did that thing, how did you, did I totally lose the audience? A lot of times your coaches will say, I have no idea what you're talking about. I have no clue. And on the flip side, your coaches might say, hey, so you said this, and that was terrible, because this is how I took it. Was that how you meant it? And you might be horrified. Oh no, that's not how I meant it. That's not how I took it. One of the great ways to also get feedback is to get the main messaging feedback. This is a great, great tool that you can use in any of your speaking and any of your team meetings. Here's the scenario. You are giving a presentation and 15 minutes after it ends, right? The class is over or the keynote is over, and somebody in your audience meets up with their friend, and their friend asks that person in your audience, oh, hey, I saw the presentation. What's that about? If your audience member is able to adequately talk about what your content was, what your main message was about, then that's giving you appropriate feedback, okay? So having that team of feedback, just simply asking, hey, before we get started, what was the messaging behind my content? I want to model that for you all here, and I'd love someone to give me feedback. So let's pretend like this is 15, it's going to be 1:15 Central Time. And your friend says, hey, what were you doing during lunch? Oh, I went to this workshop. Oh, cool. What was it about? Somebody tell me what this workshop was about. Give me feedback to see how well my message landed.
Screen to screen etiquette.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Screen to screen etiquette.
Screen to screen etiquette. Cool. And what did you learn?
I learned the 3 points, which I'd have to look and read to tell you what they are because I don't remember. They are: public speaking is a skill, not a task. Public speaking is anytime you say anything out loud. And public speaking perfection is an illusion.
What are some of the tactical, tangible things that you learned from that session with those lessons that you think you'll apply?
Being sincere, coming across clearly, keeping it exciting without being too dramatic, and making sure that my content is clear, that I'm communicating, and then engaging, keeping my audience engaged so that they can participate and I can keep their attention and we can have our groove or like interacting with one another. Keep them engaged.
That's awesome.
I can get something out of it.
That is awesome. Hey, thank you for that feedback. That actually does give me a great deal of feedback. What I heard from you is some of the tangible things in your own words, which is exactly what one of my intentions were, is so that you can recount some of the experiences. Another reason why I don't have visual aids is because I want you to experience the learning instead of just hearing and reading the learning. That should always be one of your goals when you're giving a presentation, when you're creating content, deliverable content. How can your audience members experience the feelings and the knowledge? Now, the other feedback I got was, you had to read those 3 key lessons. That's really important feedback for me because one of my intentions was that when we log off, those 3 lessons should be ingrained in your memory. So the feedback for me is, you know what? I didn't connect back to those essentials enough. I should have repeated those at least 3 or 4 times so that it was right on the line of getting annoying to you all. But just that line, right before that line, it's etched in your memory. So the fact that you have to read those actually gives me great feedback. Thank you for that. Now, let's shift. I know we have about 10 minutes left and I want to be mindful of time. Let's shift into questions and workshopping. I'd love to take any questions that you may have on what are some of the projects that you're working on that you may be concerned about speaking screen to screen. What are some of the innovative that we can come up with so that your audience gets connected?
I have a question.
Please, Jennifer.
So I'm working on a project for June, and there could be 60 to 100 people in this webinar experience, and I like the idea of doing breakout rooms and having a chance to interact personally with the audience in smaller groups. But when I'm not moderating a breakout room, while I'm going round robin, can I teach, train, or assign other moderators to run that function for me, build that model? Do I leave them to have some leader step up? Do I assign a leader to step up? Do I give them tasks and responsibilities? Do I give them full freedom to do what they want in their own breakout session? And how do I keep engagement high while I'm round robining through smaller groups?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you went through the three options, but I want to dig a little bit deeper as to what those options might look like. If you have access to leaders prior to that, certainly it would only take about 15 minutes prior to your actual event. You could say, hey, you 15 people in a breakout group, meet me 15 minutes before the event, and you can walk them through how you expect them to walk their small groups through. The second option is just choosing randomly, a little bit of what I did today. There's always going to be people willing to engage and willing to speak up. There's always going to be someone who wants to be involved in that process. So you can say, if this were our 60-person webinar, I would say, I need 10 people. And if I see your hand up, you're going to be one of my 10. Okay, you, and I'm jotting them down. And then I'm going to say, okay, you 10 people, you're the speaker for these breakout sessions. I'm going to drop the document into the chat. And speakers just go through your bullet point questions. Then you also assign a recorder or a reporter to that. So when they come back out of the group, you have someone new and different saying, what did you learn? What did you experience? That's keeping everybody kind of on their toes and keeping everybody engaged, but at the level in which they want to engage in. You could also go, I wouldn't quite recommend it, but you could go free for all and just say, okay, I'm going to hit the breakout session rooms and somebody be the speaker, somebody be the recorder, and go. And that could be effective if you are trying to model some teamwork strategies, because then you could talk about what was your experience within that small group as to how roles were assigned, how they weren't assigned, what worked in terms of getting through the material, what didn't work in terms of getting through the material. I do want to share this. This is something that I experienced with one of the workshops that I was a part of, is you can do, there's ways to do votes and tolls on Zoom and on other platforms, but a great experience that I had was a general vote. So if this were a large audience and I said, how many of you would like to have ice cream for dinner? You know, if this were a general audience, everybody would raise their hand, right? And a great way to do is, if you want ice cream for dinner, keep your camera on. If you want cheeseburgers for dinner, then shut your camera off. And as the moderator, you get to see visually, okay, oh, well, you know, approximately 90% of the people want ice cream for dinner. We're gonna have ice cream for dinner. Or the flip side. And you could also have somebody, if you have somebody in the actual webinar with you, if you needed to take a specific apps as to who wants ice cream, who wants cheeseburgers. It's a great question, Jennifer, thank you. Any other questions? Again, I want to be mindful of time, so we have time for one more quick one. Lynn, go ahead.
When you're engaged in more of a discussion versus a presentation like you are now, are there any tips you have for us that way? There's always these start and stops from whomever is going to start speaking. And so yes, if you have any tips on that, that would be helpful. Absolutely.
So if you're leading a discussion, you say, okay, who would like to answer this question, especially in screen-to-screen communications, like, and then we get the frozen ones. There's a lot of ways you can handle it. One, I like to just kind of let it happen naturally. For me, that releases my perfection fear. I like to be a little bit imperfect and let a little bit of imperfection seep in, so that I have to have everything right. But you could have people do the reactions, right? You could have people stop the video. You could have people, I mean, raising the hand has still not gotten out of style. We can still do this, and you can call on someone. And again, be okay with the, and you know, we're gonna experience awkwardness. We're gonna experience weirdness when we, whether or not it's through technology or whether or not it's face-to-face, we're always gonna have those weird, you know, not weird, but awkward interactions. It's okay. The more we can have those, the more it realizes we're human, and the more it realizes that we are being authentic in that All right. What I would love to do is I'm going to drop I see some questions in the chat, which I love. I'm going to drop my contact info in the chat. You can contact me or reach me in any one of these ways. One of the greatest ways to get involved and plugged into a lot more of this content is my Facebook group, the Speak Up Stories Facebook group. I have a weekly theme, weekly coaching, weekly content, and we'll be doing some weekly lunch. Lunch is very similar to this, where we can workshop some of your speaking and where we can talk about some of the projects that you're doing and getting some live coaching in that regard. Before I go, I want to end with a quick story about speaking and about skills. I mentioned to you that public speaking is a skill. It's not a task. In 2015, I had a really, really rough time. It was one of the lowest points in my entire life. And through random series of events, I ended up in a CrossFit gym. Now, I never considered myself an athlete or athletic in any regard. I dabbled here and there, but I was not anything, it wasn't anything that I really strove for. And going into CrossFit, I never thought that I would be able to improve. I never thought I would be able to do some of the things that I'm able to do now. I just went in and kept showing up, kept showing up, kept showing up. My encouragement to you, regardless of where you are on the public speaking skills spectrum, whether you are scared to death to even say your name, or you've been on multiple stages multiple times, there's always a skill that you can improve upon as long as you are showing up, showing up, showing up. The key is continuing to speak up your stories, release that imperfection, and know that every time you speak, you get the opportunity to practice your words. Thank you all so much. I hope to hear from all of you and see you in the Facebook group soon.
Eric, thank you so much. That was fantastic information. I think the biggest thing I learned was a reminder that people don't show up to these things just to see when you're going to screw up, right? So kind of to your third principle of it's not an exercise in perfection. People actually just want to learn something. So you can be real and just have a conversation. Thank you so much. This was great attendance today. Obviously, great presentation by Eric. Please keep checking back. Like I said in the intro, we have a lot more education opportunities coming up on most likely Tuesdays and Thursdays. So please check our website, check our Instagram and Facebook. Reach out to us directly, or Eric if you have questions about public speaking. We have all of these. This one was recorded today, as well as all of our previous webinars, and you can find all of those on our website, along with any of the other resources your small business needs. Thanks to our team, Lisa, Susie, and Sierra. Thanks everybody for coming, and we hope to see you at the next one.